Okay, shalom. Okay, very mystical teaching. This is all about a verse found in 1 Chronicles 29:29 that talks about a particular book of Gad the Seer. We're going to be having a look at that soon. This is a picture of the Israeli, or the Hebrew, should I say, version of that particular book. I haven't actually seen that particular book myself, but I do know there is a Hebrew book available. I'm going to show you how to get the words of Gad the Seer on the internet for free, and also some other resources that you can read about it. What the institutes within Israel, I'm talking about the universities, the academics, have been able to make regarding this manuscript that was found, that is called the words of Gad the Seer. Okay. I think what I'll do is, before I go through 1 Chronicle, let's read 1 Chronicles so we know where we've got some information about this whole concept of the words of Gad the Seer. It says, "And the words of King David, and the first and the last, behold, they are written in the words of Samuel the seer." And this word is different from Gad the Seer. It's a roe. Let's have a look so I can show you. Shmuel ha-roe. So that means literally the seer. To see is to look, and it's like shepherd. Okay, it's the same word for shepherd. The shepherd is the one who's looking over the flock. And in the words of Nathan, the prophet, Nathan Hanavi, that's there. And then Wa'al divrei Gad ha-hozer here. Wa'al divrei Gad ha-hozer. So that's where we get the concept that the words of King David are written in these 3 books. Well, we've obviously got the books of Shmuel. We've got the 2 books of Samuel within the Bible. We don't, however, have the words of Nathan the prophet, nor do we have the words of Gad the Seer. However, there was a find in the 18th century. We're going to go and have a look at that now. So this is basically a PDF that was put together by Bar Ilan University in Ramat Gan, Israel. Okay. Regarding this whole book that was found, the date of the words of Gad the Seer, they tried to distinguish whether this was like a medieval manuscript or something much earlier, and they did conclude in this particular analysis that it was much earlier. Whether it goes back to biblical times, even though the book of Gad the Seer uses language, it's very biblical and very ancient. They have determined that yes, it's more ancient than previously thought of, but not as ancient as in the time of King David's seer. But I mean, it's all up for negotiation. I have actually looked at the book of Gad the Seer and the words of Gad the Seer, and to me it seems very reasonable that it could actually be an authentic book, the book that is mentioned in 1 Chronicles. It just, there's a certain flow and feel to it, and there's a certain purity to it. There's absolutely nothing in there that is that's grievous in any way that makes you think, oh, there's just somebody's written that down off their own. In their own authority. There's something really quite interesting about it. Anyway, this is just how it reads. So you've got some background information about this book that was found. The purpose of the paper is to discuss a new book by the name of the words of Gad the Seer. This is an apocryphal Hebrew book known only from a unique manuscript. This is only one manuscript that was copied at Cochin, India in the middle of the 18th century. At the beginning of the 19th century, it was purchased by the University of Cambridge, England, and since then it has been there. The name of the book, together with the other extra-biblical books that were in the possession of the Jews of Cochin, has appeared in print in German, Hebrew and English during the last 2 centuries. Nevertheless, this book is almost unknown to the scholarly world. The aim of this article is not only to draw attention to the book, but also to demonstrate its significance by evaluating the date. And so I haven't read the entire of this, but you can download this PDF for free off the internet. Okay. However, there's an entire copy of the book that is available for free, the Ancient Book of Gad the Seer. You can buy this. This is by Ken Johnson, an English version, and it's got the entire of it in. And you can also, like I say, there's some really interesting things in there. I haven't read it all. I've listened to this, however. If you just put Gad the Seer in, there's some information that you can get off, and you can get the whole book read on YouTube. So if you're busy, you can read it. And then if you wanted to order a copy of the book, that is it in Hebrew. And this is the only place where I've been able to get a source for purchasing this book. But like it said, it's in Hebrew. I wanted to purchase a copy myself because I wanted to actually it's got Psalm 145. Well, in the Septuagint and the Peshitta and the Vulgate, apparently 145 has got a verse for the letter Nun. It's an acrostic psalm, so it's got all the letters of the alphabet in order, except it's got the letter Nun missing in the Masoretic text. However, the Septuagint, the Peshitta, Aramaic Peshitta, and the Vulgate, Latin Vulgate, have all got a verse Nun in them. However, in this book, the words of the book of Gad, the words of this Gad the Seer, should I say, it has got within it a verse Nun in Psalm 145 that is different from the Septuagint. But it's very interesting. So I wanted to see what it was in actual Hebrew, so I could do a gematria on it. Obviously, because Psalm 145 is such a significant psalm, and it's said daily on numerous occasions throughout the day within the Jewish prayer book. So I really wanted to find that letter Nun and have it in Hebrew. So at some point I'll try and access that and maybe do an analysis of it. So that's just a little bit of background into this book. So now let's go back and have a look. Okay, so that was a little bit of background into this particular book, right, that's mentioned in this verse here. Now we're going to do some really wonderful gematria that's going to point us to some wonderful concepts. I've analysed these previously and I've never put them to video before. Some really wonderful stuff. Like I say, it's very mystical. What is it actually teaching us this? So bearing in mind that is the book of Gad the Seer that was talking about, that was found in Cochin in India, and it's connected to the Yemenite Jews in somewhere, or some, I've read somewhere that possibly this book came and originated in the Yemeni community, which, if that's the case, and they are so stringent to keep things very authentic, it just ups the importance and significance of this book if it has in fact originated from the Yemeni Jewish community, because like I say, they are very stringent with their Torah observance and everything, and they haven't changed or departed in any way from the biblical times. So there's a lot to consider, but what we're going to be looking at today is actually what is written in the Tanakh regarding this book, and do some number crunching and seeing what these particular words point to, what they're indicating to us. So let's go and have a look. Let's go and look at some of the numbers behind it. Right, so straight away we've got this. We're taking this section of this particular verse. Wa'al difrei Gad HaChozeh, and in the words of Gad the Seer. So 354 plus 152 comes to 456. Filled, it comes to 2,596. And the square ordinal, so each letter squared in accordance to his position in the alphabet, comes 1,144. Very significant numbers. So straight away we've got this connection here. I find this really very fascinating. This entire connection to, I'm going to go show you this in context, but this 2,596, what do we mean by filled? We mean each letter filled as it sounds. So Vav filled, Vav Vav, Ayin filled, Ayin Yod Nun, Lamed filled, Lamed Mem Daleth. So each letter filled as it sounds. And this is a very common cipher or gematria within Judaism. And it puts us into a connection to this particular verse. Therefore, do not let anyone judge you by what you eat or drink, or with regard to a religious festival, a new moon celebration, or a Shabbat day. The reason why it's so significant, this is a very significant verse in and of itself, because one, there's a lot hidden in here. Why? Because the ordinal is 661, which is exactly the same as Esther. And the whole book of Esther has within it no mention of the name God. There's no reference at all to God. Septuagint version apparently of Esther does, but the Masoretic text does not. It's hidden, and the name Esther means hidden because it's really the whole absolute divine providence of our Father in heaven, Yod He Waw He, working in such a concealed way in such adverse situations to bring about an ultimate victory over the most powerful enemies of Israel, Amalek, the Amalekites. Haman is an Amalekite, in such a hidden way, but really is so apparent in all that hiddenness. So there's connections to this particular phrase found within the New Testament and Esther. Okay, 661. That comes to 5,192. That's the regular and the ordinal. The regular gematria plus the ordinal gematria of this verse in Hebrew. Bearing in mind it is originally written in Greek. Greek has a different gematria, but it does have its own gematria for the Greek language. But this is a Hebrew translation of the New Testament. So it's in the same Hebrew gematria. So it's 2 times this, and in the words of Gad the Seer. There's very profound connections to that, because when you read this particular New Testament statement in context, it's very there's a lot of things that show up in that particular book from New Testament. In the words of Gad the Seer, there's some common themes. It's really quite interesting, and again, the significance of this particular phrase can't be overlooked, because the Mispah Gadol numbering, when we take into consideration the Sophite letters, comes to 6,391, which is, as we can see here, 7 times 913, and 913 is Bereshith, the very first word of the Torah. So we've got it's like firing an arrow and hitting the target straight on. When something hits the target straight on, you've got to take it very seriously. Especially when it's got the words Bereshith, it's connected to the words Bereshith, and obviously here deeply connected to us, and in the words of Gad the Seer, and then connected to that whole concept of Esther. Let's go and have a look. I'll just bring the next part up. This is another highly, highly mystical and significant it's part of Proverbs. It's a verse within Proverbs, and it talks about the spider grasps with her hands, and she's to be found in the king's palaces. And this is a very mystical and esoterical secret verse regarding the concept of Serach Bat Asher, who found the bones of Yosef with Moshe, so that enabled the children of Israel to exit exile, to get out of exile, to get out of Egypt, because they was able to get the bones that they had promised to Joseph that they would take with them when they left. So this is like a very hidden. There's a lot about it that's hidden regarding Serach Bat Asher. The verses come to, the whole verse comes to fillings out of Serach Bat Asher, and plus like Pharaoh's wife grabbed a hold of Yosef. So it's not Pharaoh's wife, sorry, Potiphar's wife grabbed a hold of Yosef. Okay, and it caused him to be put into prison. All the story, the story of that occurs in Genesis. And the word for her grabbing hold of Yosef is exactly the same as this. Like the spider that grasps with her hand. So tapes is the spider that grabs with her hand, and she's the one really, Bathyah is the one that grabs hold of the bones of Joseph to make sure that they all get out of Egypt. The children of Israel are able to leave Egypt. And there's also connections, obviously, to Joseph, then to the concept of Moshiach ben Yosef, who is Yeshua. So there's all kinds of very mystical things there. And even here, we've got 401 times 7. 401 is the regular and ordinate of Nachash. Okay, so she is opposite the evil serpent. The serpent is 358, which is exactly the same as Moshiach. It's also 43 ordinal. The regular is 358, exactly the same as Moshiach. The ordinal is 43, exactly the same as Esav, who represents the evil inclination, who represents our own Satan, if you like, inner Satan, Satan, our inner serpent. So there's all kinds of connections there. So if you obviously add your 358 plus your 43 ordinally, it comes to 401. So that's serpent. So she's opposite that unholy force, the unholy force that conceals the concept of the Moshiach. She is the holy force that reveals the concept of Moshiach. So she's connected to, and in the words of Gad the Seer, and she's also connected to this whole concept. Therefore, do not let anyone judge you by what you eat or drink, or with regard to a religious festival, a new moon celebration, or a Shabbat day. Also, if you analyse this phrase here, the concept of the new moon in the Greek, and I've recently done a teaching about the Bible, the biblical calendar, the Hebrew calendar, and so if you look at the last couple of teachings that I've done on that, it goes through the Greek, and it goes through Acts 7:20 and Exodus 2:22, and it goes through a parallel verse, and what it does is it shows you that the word moon and month are synonymous. Basically, it proves that months are based on the lunar cycle, not a solar cycle. And this connects back to this whole concept of the new moon that we find here as well. You can trace it all through to prove that the calendar is lunar solar. Basically, that's where I'm going, but I'm not going to go through that today. So very significant. There's lots of significant things there. Let's go and just have a look at this from Colossians. Okay, so I'm going to go through this because, like I say, whilst I was reading this, and I'd just been reading some of the book of Gad, I thought, there's a lot of parallels in between this verse, so no wonder there's connections between them. This is absolutely incredible. It says, absent in body, present in spirit. For I want you to know how much I am struggling for you and for those at Laodicea. I'm really not into, I don't know too much New Testament, okay? So if I'm pronouncing that wrong, I apologise. And for all who have not met me face to face, that they may be encouraged in heart, knit together in love, and filled with the full riches of complete understanding, so that they may know the mystery of God, namely Christ, in whom are hidden all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge. I say this so that no one will deceive you by smooth rhetoric. And although I am absent from you in body, I am present with you in spirit. And I delight to see your orderly condition and firm faith in Christ. Therefore, just as you have received Christ Jesus as Lord, continue to walk in him, rooted and built up in him, established in the faith as you were taught, and overflowing with thankfulness. See to it that no one takes you captive through philosophy and empty deception, which are based on human tradition and the spiritual forces of the world, rather than on Christ, Moshiach. For in Moshiach all the fullness of the deity dwells in bodily form. And you have been made complete in Moshiach, who is the head over every ruler and authority. In him you were also circumcised, in putting off your sinful nature, work in progress for some of us, that with a circumcision performed by Moshiach and not by human hands. And having been buried with him in baptism, you were raised with him through your faith in the power of God, who raised him from the dead. When you were dead in your trespasses and in the uncircumcision of your sinful nature, God made you alive with Moshiach. He forgave us all our trespasses, has cancelled the debt ascribed to us in the decrees that stood against us. He took it away, nailing it to the cross, and having disarmed the powers and authorities, he made public spectacle of them, triumphing over them by the cross. Therefore, let no one judge you by what you eat or drink, or with regard to a feast, a new moon, or a Shabbat. So that's where we've got the connection between that and the words of Gad the Seer. These are a shadow of things to come, but the body that casts it belongs to Moshiach. Do not let anyone who delights in false humility and the worship of angels. This is so profound. This is so profound because there's a lot of people that worship Metatron and thinking that he is the Moshiach and he's nothing more than an angel. Okay, this goes on within Judaism at this time. I've had a lot of arguments with a Jewish friend that I've got regarding this matter, and they are basically worshipping an angel, and they're trying to this particular person that I came into contact with, I have a lot of respect for him. He's a really great teacher, a great academic. He's actually a doctor, and he's funded to do all this research to hopefully bring peace between Jewish people and Christians, but he is so wrong. He's so wrong. He's unbelievable, and there's no reasoning because he just thinks he's Jewish and right. And he's even, as I believe, he believes in Moshiach, but he's just got caught up in error of indoctrination, and it's very sad to see. He worships an angel. Is actually the exact wording here is relevant to him. It says, "These are a shadow of things to come, but the body that casts it belongs to Moshiach. Do not let anyone who delights in false humility and the worship of angels disqualify you with speculation about what he has seen." And this is exactly what he does. He disqualifies us that have been born and raised in Moshiach, myself, as a believer in Moshiach, simply because I don't want to accept his version of Erev Rav Judaism and have it rammed down my throat, and especially the fact that he believes that Moshiach is Metatron. No, it's exactly as it's written in here, and I only came across this the other day. No thanks. I'm glad I came across this verse. Do not let anyone who delights in false humility and the worship of angels disqualify you with speculation about what he has seen. Such a person is puffed up without basis by his unspiritual mind. Of course he is. And we've all come across these kinds of people. He has lost connection to the head, from whom the whole body, supported and knit together by its joints and ligaments, grows as God caused it to grow. We are growing in Moshiach. Don't let anybody, Jewish, non-Jewish, no matter what the religion, try and disqualify you because they feel that they've had some kind of revelation. They have seen things as high and holy as what they have seen. Don't go along with them, especially if they worship angels. You've got to be very, very careful. And teach people to worship angels. He's done whole videos on YouTube about it. I was just glad to read this. If you have died with Moshiach to the spiritual forces of the world, why, as though you still belong to the world, do you submit to its regulations? Do not handle, do not taste, do not touch. These will all perish with use because they are based on human commands and teachings. Such restrictions indeed have an appearance of wisdom with their self-prescribed worship. A lot of what has become rabbinical Judaism fits the bill here. Their false humility, of course it's false humility, and their harsh treatment of the body, that's talking about something else. That's talking about the ascetics, the people that birch with themselves and torment themselves, and make out that the body is totally evil. The body is totally not evil. It just sometimes, you've got to dominate over your body with your soul. But they are of no value against the indulgence of the flesh. So I was interested in that. Let's go and have a look. Why? Because it does mention about this concept of the the shadow. Let's go and have a look. Okay, so I'll just read it from here. And it came to pass, when the voice of the Lamb ceased speaking, lo, a man dressed in linen came with 3 vine branches and 12 palms in his hand. And he took the Lamb from the hand of the Son, and put the crown on his head, and the vine branches and palms on his heart. The man dressed in linen cried like a ram's horn, saying, What are you doing here in purity? And how did you get here in purity, that you have carved yourself a place to combine impurity with my covenant that I have set with the vine branches and palms? God's judgment on impurity. I can't wait for them to remove the spirit of impurity. I can't wait for God to remove the spirit of impurity. I think we're all suffering as a consequence. We're living in very impure times, and it's very discouraging. God's judgment on impurity. And I heard the Lamb's shepherd saying, There is a place for me with the pure, but not for the impure. For I am a holy God, and do not want the impure. I only want the pure, even though I created them both, and my eyes are equally on them both. But there is an advantage to the abundance of purity over the abundance of impurity, just like there is an advantage of a man over a shadow. For the shadow does not exist without man. So it's talked about Moshiach is the body, okay, didn't it? And then that casts a shadow. For the shadow does not exist without man, and only by the man's existence is the shadow given to the tired and exhausted. This applies in the same way to the pure and the impure. For, what's happened there? Just wait a minute. There we go. This applies in the same way to the pure and impure. For all gates of intelligence are turned around since the death of the 8 branches of the vine, as is found in the words of righteousness in the true book. But because of the wanderings of the sheep, their rest and divisions, intelligence is stopped up until I do greatly in keeping grace. So I could see from that parallels to what we've just read in Colossians. So this is the actual book of Gad, and it's actually pointing to concepts within Colossians that are actually pointed out here as well. So we've just got to bear this in mind. When we're looking and thinking about the authenticity of this book. Okay, so we've gone and had a look at that now. Let's have a look at some more numbers. So we've got this concept of the grape, which is related to Moshe. This is, we're talking about when it comes to the Talmud, there are written in the Talmud, there's 3 suggestions as to what the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil is. Grape is one. It's all related. The opposite of that is Moshiach, the true fruit. Okay, so Moshe represents the grape, and it comes to a square ordinal of 556, which is exactly the same as in the words of Gad the Seer. So, the words of Gad the Seer are some way opposite the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So it's very significant, because in some ways the entire written Torah that we've got today compared to the Torah of Moshiach that we will get in the future is equivalent to the tree of knowledge. Even Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai made this observation within the Zohar. Okay, that the book that we've got at current, because it contains good and evil, it contains a concept of God where he changes. Man can do something wrong and suddenly God's angry with us, but this isn't really the truth. When we attach to the tree of life, we attach to God that changes not. That he's always gracious, like it said in the book of Gad there. It talks about he's always gracious, always kind, always loving, always forgiving. And we've been elevated up to the level of children of the living God. We're not intimidated or afraid of this wrathful, punishing God anymore. We've been brought into his palace. We've been elevated up from this whole system of reward and punish where somehow the revelation of God's oneness is connected to the actions and thoughts and words of men. This will be done away with eventually when we enter into tree of life consciousness. In the minute, at the minute we are still caught in that tree of knowledge experience where there's good and there's bad. Okay, so it's as if we're continually eating from the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and we will break that cycle eventually. Okay, so Moshe 456, which is exactly the same as, and in the words of Gad the Seer, Moshe represents this aspect of the tree of the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil. The fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, I should say. However, also one of the other fruits is the fig tree. Okay, so it's either the grape, the fig, or the wheat, and they represent Moshe, Moshiach ben Yosef, Moshiach ben David, the three main concepts of Moshiach. So the fig tree is Tahaneh, and that also comes to 456. That's the regular. So there is a connection, and there is an absolute oneness between Moshe and Moshiach ben Yosef. I've shown this through a lot of my teachings. If you go and put do a search of the teachings where it says like Moshe is Yeshua, for example, there's loads of connections. I go about this all the time. So we can even see a connection here. So a revelation of Moshe united to the fig tree is to be found in the words of Gad the Seer. And when you read through that book of Gad the Seer, the words of Gad the Seer that we've got, it's very, very, there's a lot of revelation regarding it's like the book of Revelation in a lot of ways regarding the whole concept of Moshiach ben Yosef to some degree. You can definitely see there's connections to that whole concept, so just very interesting things. And then we've got this whole concept of Miriam Hanaviyah, and Miriam the prophetess. So 363 plus 93, there's very significant numbers in themselves, because 363 is HaMoshiach, the Moshiach. 93 is Moshiach ben David, spelt rectified. And no, it's Moshiach ben David with the Mispah Gadol. So when the Nun Sophite of Ben, son, is given the ordinal Mispah Gadol ordinal number, it comes to 93 as opposed to 82. Because the Nun is no longer 14 but 25. So there's 11 difference. So it goes from 82 up to 93. Okay, I hope I made myself clear, but I go through that a lot. So Miriam the prophet, these are significant numbers, but if you add it up, come to 456, she is basically representing the final letter He, and the final letter He of the name YHWH represents the Holy Shekinah. It represents the whole concept of kingdom, which is basically the whole kingdom of YHWH on earth as it is in heaven, and it's the job of the Moshiach to build that up. So there's a connection between Miriam the prophetess and the whole concept of the Moshiach. Okay, very clear. There's a final letter here. And then we've got the Meshachim who lament in Netzach and Hod and stand in the gates of rebuilt Jerusalem. So that's got an ordinal also of 456. And these two Meshachim, two messiahs who lament in Netzach and Hod, they're the two legs. They're connected to the right leg and the left leg, and there's also some indication that they're connected to the two pillars in Solomon's temple, Yachin and Boaz. So there's some connection to that as well. But that's a little bit too mystical even for me at this time. I'd have to really think about that. So there is some connection. And then we've also got this connection to Bathyah, the daughter of Yah. It's got a square ordinal that's equivalent to all the 613 commandments. 39 is the same ordinal as Moshe, but together with the ordinal, regular and ordinal, comes to 456, so connected to all these things as well. Why is that? Because you've got this concept of Bathyah representing, she was known as the snake goddess. If you do some research, in one of the midrashes, she's actually called, you've got to understand she was Pharaoh's daughter, and these were considered living gods. Which god was she then? She's the daughter of Pharaoh, who represents Ra, the supreme god. So who did she represent? And there's a mention of her name in some of the Jewish midrashes. I'm not going to go over it in this lesson. I've gone over it in previous lessons. But she was basically the snake goddess. And if you look at the snake goddess in Egyptology, this is not just within Egyptology, this is a very ancient theme, a very ancient, what we could call a myth. Okay, so there's some truth in it. It's the woman that's, woman at the top and serpent at the bottom. And basically, she represented this snake goddess, this Egyptian snake goddess, and Renetetet, I can't remember the actual name now, Thermosis I think it's called in Greek, but there's a different name for it in Egyptian. So half on the top, she's what is she? She's a human on the top and a serpent on the bottom. And then I'll go show you some images so you know what I'm talking about. Okay, so I've previously gone over this. This is some kind of idol or image that was found. And basically in the book of Jubilees and in the book of Josephus, they named Pharaoh's daughter Thermothis. I think that's how you pronounce it. Also translated as Tharmuth and Thermutis. And the Greek, which is the Greek name of Renenutet, the Egyptian snake deity. Okay, so Thermothis, right, 843. The goddess is rare outside of Egypt. Some examples have been found in Rome. It is noteworthy that both examples also reference the crocodile Sobek. A stele identified by Eda Bresciani depicts Isis Thermothis nursing a baby crocodile. She suggests it is connection to Fayum, where both gods were common. Another example from Rome shows an altar depicting Sobek, who was the crocodile, Anubis, and the goddess. Anubis is relatively common outside of Egypt, and depiction to Sobek are not unknown, but again the connection between Isis, Thermothis, and Sobek suggests a link to Fayum. During the late period, Isis became associated with Renenutet, forming the composite goddess Isis Thermothis. Okay, why is this important? Because Eve is depicted as half. It's Eve who's depicted as the serpent in a lot of tradition within Christianity. Let's go and have a look. So you've got all these half woman. It's like the backside of Eve. It's like some evil female force. It's become known as Lilith, and it's very, very common. This doesn't just exist within Judaism. This whole unrectified divine feminine, or this powerful feminine force that's unrectified. She's serpent-like at the bottom and human at the top. It's very common. But Eve's often depicted as this: serpent at the bottom, human at the top. Serpent at the bottom, human at the top. But if you can see the similarity between her and Eve, that's what you've got to understand. It's Eve's, she's the temptress, if you like. There's an aspect to her that's a temptress. She's half serpent. And here, look, the images are basically the same Eve, but half serpent, half female. Body upper female, lower. And I've done teachings why that is so. We've got, and it's a little bit connected to what Yeshua said, be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. Okay. It's just which way around should we be? We've got to be cunning in our mind and not below, because it leads a lot to impurity in the world. We've got to be innocent below, and yet very cunning, especially because we're living in this world. We've got to be wise, which means wise as serpents means use your brain, be cunning because you're wise. Don't be like a serpent below that leads you into every lust and temptation possible, as is what happened here. And then what you're subject to the forces of good and evil. You've become seduced by your lower natures. We should be controlled by upper natures. We should allow our soul to dominate over our body. And this, in our fallen state, our body tends to dominate over our soul. So we end up something like this, half serpent, half human. I can identify with that myself. There's times when you know, you do experience. Okay, so I'm not going to go through that now. Okay, this actually will come up later. I've just realised this. Her voice shall go like a snake. Very interesting. This is taken from Jeremiah 46:22, and it's talking about the Shekinah. The Shekinah in exile is almost like a snake with a head bowed down. This is what this goes through. I'm not going to go through this. I've done this in a previous teaching. But how is it related then to what we're going on with today? Let's go and have a look. Okay, so back to here. Bathyah, daughter of Yah, who really was the serpent goddess, snake goddess, but hidden in her, when she was fully rectified, she became Bathyah. Concealed in this phenomena was the daughter of Yah. And this is what we've got to go through, that transformation process. What helped transform her from the snake goddess, where the lower nature is taking domination over the upper nature. Well, she was obviously connected to Moshe, the Torah of Moshe, that is the 613 commandments. And then, you know, Bathyah is one of the women from the Torah, along with Yocheved and Serach Bat Asher, that have all got heavenly yeshivas, the womenly heavenly yeshivas, and the very, very, very high status, and it talks about these heavenly yeshivas in the Torah. But Bathyah's got one of the heavenly yeshivas. So obviously concealed within this fallen Eve, this fallen state of man, if you like, was the potential to reveal that we are in fact hidden in that fallen state is our true status. What is that true status? Well, we're daughters of Yah, or sons of Yah, sons of Yod and He, the upper Yod and He. Okay, and daughter is obviously referring to the lower hair that needs to be elevated up from a fallen status in exile. Well, we'll come back to this because it does come back. The gematria of Gad the Seer points back to this particular verse. I didn't make that connection until now. I've only just gone and seen there by accident, so I'm not planned to speak about that, but we'll probably go over it just to show that even in this fallen state of humanity, we are being driven by a super conscious reality that's trying to drive us home to our true status as daughters and sons of Yah, daughters and sons of the King. So even sometimes in our fallen, depraved nature, we have got this super consciousness that is driving us on to perfection. And that's the soul that we have within us. It's in a fallen state because it's fallen in what way? Well, it's subject to the forces of impurity within exile, 49 levels of impurity, you know, but we have to take that in and, you know, keep the Torah and the wisdom of the Torah in order to perfect us and in order to reveal the truth that we are not slithering serpents, half human, half serpent, with our lower natures dominating, so that we're constantly eating from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. We've got to take that and transform that into our true natures as daughters and sons of the King, attached to the tree of life, okay, which is the name Yod He Waw He, Yah, children of Yah, Yod He. We become the Vav He. You know, like Moshiach is the Vav and the He is the bride. So we are daughters of that upper union. Okay, let's go and have a look. More numbers. Absolutely wonderful. So we've got the words of Gad the Seer, 248. 316, by the way, is Yeshua. So there's a big connection there. Yeshu is the derogatory way which Yeshua is cursed with the, you know, with the curse Yimach Shemo Zikro, his name's memory be erased. Okay, so we've got this concept, Uriel. Okay, so I just had to rearrange that a little bit. So Uriel is 248. Uriel is one of the angels that's part of the word Argman, which is the blend, is like purple, the blend in the curtain between the blue and the red. So it's really like Moshe, the middle of the bird. You've got the blue that is Moshiach ben Dawid, the red that is Moshiach ben Yosef. Together they come together and create the purple Argaman. And Uriel is the first letter. Is the Argaman stands for 5 angels, I think it is, and the first of those angels, the Aleph of Argaman, is Uriel. So it would be Uriel, Raphael, Michael, can't remember what the G would be, but Argaman. In anywhere they all come to. There's 5 different angels. Nuriel and things like that is the nun. Raphael, Gavriel, that would be it for the Gimel. So you've got all these powerful angelic forces that are connected to that colour that blends the right and the left. And the right and the left is Michael and Gavriel. But when they come together, you've got the 5 angels, Uriel, Raphael, Gavriel, Michael, and Nuriel. And it's Argaman. That's just a little bit of a detour there. And 248 is also Moshe and Yeshua. So we've got this connection again between Moshe and Yeshua. They are totally one. And we've got to get that. They are the Moshiach that we have revealed so far. The Moshe is the Moshiach, the revelation of the Moshiach within the letter of the Torah. Yeshua is a revelation of the, Moshe represents the name of YHWH as revealed within the letter of the Torah. Yeshua represents the name of YHWH revealed above the letter of the Torah. That's why in that book, Colossians, it's saying, don't let anybody judge you regarding any of the festivals, because we are talking about a revelation that exists above. And compared to that level of revelation, the power of the name YHWH that comes from Moshiach Yeshua, some of the matters and some of the traditions and things regarding, I'm not talking about, keeping the Torah, I'm talking about the legalism that has come about. What we found within rabbinical Judaism at this time is a shadow compared to the Torah that we experience. The name of YHWH is revealed through the life of Yeshua at the highest levels of mercy possible. We're talking about his name revealed at the level of Keter, all merciful, all forgiving, all gracious, all kind. And we're talking about a level of mercy that he is simply not revealed within the Torah of Moshe. The two need to be brought together, however, because both of them represent the name of YHWH. There's got to be a marriage between. That all-seeing, merciful revelation has got to sweeten the harsh judgments that are found within the book of Moshe. And this is talked about within the Parashah Nassau, found within the Zohar. It talks about the all-seeing eye of mercy, the all-seeing eye of Keter, washing clean the 2 eyes of Zerampin, washing clean the revelation that we get through the Torah of Moshe, the name revealed within the letter of the Torah. He's got to wash it clean of what? All the death, all the judgments, all the harsh punishments. Okay, so there's got to be unity between Moshe and Yeshua, because you can't have the law without the revelation of Yeshua, and you can't have Yeshua without the revelation of Moshe, the name found within Moshe. The two have got to come together, and these are the 2 sticks that come together as one stick. So it's very important, and obviously that's connected to this revelation of the words of Gad the Seer, and they would save themselves with their righteousness. So this is okay, I know where we get this from. This is another analysis. I haven't quite done it yet. It's talking about, there's 3 people mentioned in this Ezekiel 14:14. It talks about Noah, Daniel, and Job, Eov. Okay, and it says that if they haven't got the righteousness of these 3, they could only save themselves. Okay, but we are talking about Yeshua, a level of righteousness from Yeshua that has the power to save more than himself. Okay, and I've done in previous teachings, I am YHWH and there is no saviour beside me. But really, how is that saviour? How is YHWH as a Saviour made manifest in this world for us to be able to receive that salvation? It's made available to us through Yeshua primarily, and I've done teachings on that, about YHWH and being the Saviour. I'll probably put it in the comments. It's beautiful to go through it. It's the Moshiach that is the manifestation of his salvation to us on earth. So we've got to connect, we've got to understand that even though Yeshua is our Saviour, it's really the power of the power of his name has got to have a hook in physical reality. Everything has got to have a trace within physical reality. All these phenomenal, powerful spiritual realities, like the salvation of YHWH towards humanity, this great, incomprehensible glory has got to come down into this world. How does it come down into this world? By the way, via a serpent and a chain of descent. These super spiritual realities have to descend until we experience us trapped in here in physical reality, something that saves us. I'll talk about salvation, right? This is just an example, but it's got to have a hook into reality. How does God's will to act as our Saviour make itself manifest? Something so spiritual and only spiritual in physical reality. Well, it comes via a chain of descent. That chain of this descent is really a serpent. But once it's touched us and, once we reconnect that back up to God, it's then the Moshiach. It's a phenomena. He's got to descend, but it's for us to cause it to ascend back up to the source, if you like. We experience that salvation and it reconnects us back up to our source. And then that reconnection is it's like being saved. We have an awareness of the whole concept of Moshiach. Then there's something in it anyway. So Noah, Daniel and Eov could only save themselves. Yeshua has the power, the Moshiach has the power to save us all. But it's really only YHWH. You've got to understand, he just has to have a hook into this reality. That his hook into physical reality was Yeshua. But let's not think that Yeshua was something independent of YHWH. He's absolutely not. He was just the physical hook that he created, that enabled this power to save to come into physical reality. So my personal experience, I have been saved, but there's times where my life has literally been saved. I was once in this horrific car accident when I was 6 months pregnant, and an epileptic had an epileptic fit on the road, hit me head on 70 miles an hour. It was a closing speed of 140. That means I was on dual carriageway doing 70. This guy had his epileptic foot to the floor, and it hit me, and I just spun around. And there was a whole load of miraculous events that happened that saved my life. For example, I never looked at newspapers. I couldn't be bothered to read newspapers. I never watched television. I had no TV licence to even watch the television. I didn't have any of this filthy impurity going into my mind. Used to go to the supermarket every single week, and I'd be looking in different supermarkets for all the produce from Israel. So I'd be going in this supermarket, and just every week I'd be lifting up all the tomatoes until I found one pack of tomatoes where it would be from Israel. And then I didn't just go to one supermarket. I got like my carrots from here, and my potatoes from here, and peppers from here, and I just had this whole connection to the whole land of Israel at this time. I didn't bother ever reading newspapers. That was not what was in my mind. It was other things than that. Anyway, one day I'm sat there and I'm thinking to myself, I'm just stood like in a daze. I'm stood at the newspaper stand at the supermarket, and I'm reading this newspaper, and it's talking about this police officer that's just been killed on the road, dual carriageway. And I'm thinking, there's been some kind of environment. They're waiting to do some upgrades to make it a safer road, and it'd been delayed because of an environmental impact report. Some badgers might have been disturbed or something, but the police officer ended up dead, and it was all to do with this delayed safety, this delayed safety work that was needed to get done. They'd been delayed by this environmental impact report. Okay, so I hope you get the picture. So just remember praying. I was thinking, what am I doing? Reading the newspaper. It was so unnatural for me to be stood there. I wish I could say the same now. Now that we're all on social media, we are all having our brains fried, by the way. And this is going back 15 years. I was pregnant with my son 15 years ago, my youngest son. And so a long time ago, I was not part of social media at all. At this point, it would be about 7 years later when I got hooked into social media. But anyway, so didn't watch anything like that on television, didn't read news. But then it was so unusual for me to be reading news. I just prayed. I said, Father, I've been meant to read this story, and all I can do is I pray that nobody else dies on that road. Walked out of the supermarket, probably going to the next supermarket to look out for all my Israeli fruits and stuff like that. What happened a month later? Prior to that, this is the miracle. I had a really old car. No safety features whatsoever on it. No safety features. It was just a whole old, chunky car. It was a Volvo. It was a good car, don't get me wrong, but no safety features, no, assisted brakes, no airbags at all in the car. It was that old. And anyway, this woman at the top of my road, she just reversed around the corner. I was just stuck at the junction waiting to get out. She just reversed back into me, smashed me light. And she didn't want to go through insurance, so she ummed and ahed about the price and blah, blah, blah. Go get a quote. I got a quote. It was massive. I says, look, I'm not interested in it. The guy has quoted me a lot of money, so I says, I'd be prepared to settle for such an amount. Anyway, she ummed and ahed about this amount, and eventually she said £250, will you settle for £250? So I said, right, I'll take the money. And she brought it round on a Wednesday night. My husband at the time worked away, and he never came home through the week. He came home Friday and he went away Sunday. And so he came home that particular Wednesday. Now, we had a big flash car. Every safety feature that could have possibly been in the car, and there's me driving with the old beat up car, and he had this luxury car, cruise control and the lot. And he says, okay, so I'll take your car to go get it mended at the garage. Now she's giving the £250. I'll go sort this out. You just have my car for a couple of days. And he just came home through the week. But it just so happened she came home that same, and it never happened before. He'd never come home. He'd never come home midweek. Or the first time he ever came home midweek. And so she paid up that same night. So he left me his car. And he drove mine to go get it mended. That night, my daughter said, Mum, she said, a couple of days previous, she said, Mum, what do you want to dream about tonight? I said, I don't know. I said, no, I didn't say that. I said, I want to dream about Yeshua. And anyway, I didn't think out anything of it. That night, I was woken up by this horrific smell in the house. It was like burning, and I was frightened. And this was prior to my husband coming home. And I was thinking, what is that smell? This is really, this is disturbing me, this smell. And then I was woke up 3 times in total by this. It was like a burning. What is it? It's like electrical burning. There's something the matter. I was so frightened by it. I said, Father, I have no idea what this is, but I am frightened. This is just such a, I can't understand why I can't find any trace of this in the house. There's something about it. And I remember what my daughter had said. It all was making me feel uncomfortable. So anyway, I prayed, really, Svi, whatever this is, Father, I bring it all into your hands. And I was chanting his name, and things like that. I was really quite disturbed by it all. And then, like I say, the following day or whatever, my husband dropped the car off, took that. That all happened. That day, the day before, that same Wednesday where he came up, I had a phone call from an insurance company. And I needed to update my house insurance, and he rung me up out of the blue because I'd just taken on a car insurance policy and asked about my house insurance, and he ended up, and for nothing, absolute nothing, he ended up selling me this really good quality house insurance that included damage to my property even outside the house. So I said on the phone that time, and it were all recorded, I said, if for example I took my laptop in the car and the laptop got damaged, would you pay out for my laptop? And I worded it exactly like that, and the guy said on the phone, yes. I said, well, I haven't even got my purse, I've left my purse in the car. He says, I'll wait for you on the phone whilst you go to the car and get your purse. So anyway, I went to the purse and I came back and I paid for the whole year. It was only £80 for the entire year. It was this incredible deal. And so I got my laptop thing insured for accidental damage even outside the house. I couldn't believe it. So at the time, I mean, it was just something new to me, so I thought it was absolutely fantastic. So I went to I swear all these things happened. Next day I went to see my friends in Kilmarnock, driving back home, bang, epileptic, crossed the dual carriageway, hit me straight on. I goes into a spin, crashed into central barrier. I was 6 months pregnant. I knew I wasn't dead, but I didn't know. I was in severe pain all down my side, and I didn't know if I'd sustained injuries that I would later die from. So just got out of the car and knelt down on my hands and knees. In the car behind me was the A&E consultant, the head of A&E at the hospital that I went to, and she did a full observation on me just after the car crash. So she was able to tell me I wasn't dying, which was straight away put me to rest. And then the guy ended up having to get cut out. He was still having an epileptic fit, and there was a cardiologist as well. There was 2 cars travelling behind us, and both of them contained doctors that were able to help immediately. Like, we didn't have to wait for ambulance or anything. She immediately got me sat in her car, and she had a stethoscope and everything on her, so she was able to do observations and things like that and check that it was going to be all right. And she told me instantly, she says, it's your seatbelt injury that's caused this pain down your side. She says, but your observations are all okay. So I had that reassurance, and I said, I'm 6 months pregnant. So obviously she couldn't tell me anything about that, but she was able to communicate everything to the police and make it all that much easier. And but anyway, because it was an epileptic fit and it was classed as an act of God at the time, there was a big delay in my car insurance paying out. They paid out for the car straight away. I was sat in my husband's car. All the airbags went off. What was that smell? As it was the airbag. You know, I'd had the dream. The smell was the airbag. You know, it was the gunpowder that used to explode. There was 3 airbags that went off. There was one at the side of the door, and one at the front. So, I mean, it just reduced the whole impact. But even the orthopaedic consultant I went to see says, "What car were you driving? This is just unheard of." He was in 140 mile an hour closing speed, because they can tell how fast the cars were going, and when the impact through they measure the skid marks and they measure the spin and everything. They just put it in, and it's all calculated what the speed of the crash was at that time. So it was 140 mile an hour closing speed. They knew straight away. And the orthopaedic consultant, he said, "What car were you in?" He says, you got out, there was no injuries. He said it's just unheard of. People die in these kinds of accidents. And plus I was 6 months pregnant. My son ended up okay. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about God's salvation. I was saved that day. But, you know, the salvation, you could have been totally oblivious to it. Obviously, I wasn't. When that day that I prayed at that newspaper stand, I wasn't oblivious. Something was telling me, this isn't normal, Stephanie, pray. And, you know, I'd prayed for, it never crossed my mind, I was praying for myself. A month later, that prayer, I'd saved my own life. It happened with my brother as well, this. Every time when I sat off in the car, I'm always saying, you know, please, Father, protect the pedestrians and protect the cyclists and the animals on the road. Obviously pray for my own safety first. So let me get to my destination in shalom. Let me arrive in shalom, back in shalom. Let there be no loss and adversity or, anything like that. No spiritual impediment. And but I always pray for pedestrians. My brother was hit in a car, an out of control car, a roundabout at 50 miles an hour. He didn't even suffer concussion. And the doctors were the same with him. He said, "Are you a stunt man?" Or he says, how have you survived this? Never mind, you didn't even have concussion. And it just, where he'd flown through the air and landed, he landed on the only patch of grass that there was to land on. The rest was concrete. And everything like that. And I always think, I'd been praying in my mind for pedestrians every time I set off. And then my own brother got hit as a pedestrian and his life was totally miraculously saved. So you've got to understand our prayers are so powerful, like that day that I prayed. However, we always need a hook. This power of salvation comes into this world, and there's some physical hook with which that salvation comes in. In that case, it was the airbags. I was driving the right car when I got hit. But everything, obviously it was God. Just like in that book of Esther that we talked about, it's related back to those words from Colossians. He's hidden, but he's apart. He's hidden, he's not even name is mentioned. These things like, what car were you driving? The airbags. It was because of the crash. You could look at any number of the doctors that were behind you. Everything. You could see everything. But ultimately, God needs a hook for that salvation to come down into this world. Yeshua is the hook with which he comes down into this world. And that can manifest in any amount of ways, individual or collectively. He needs a hook to come down into this world to enable that powerful spiritual reality to manifest in a physical reality that's actually going to be constituting a salvation for us. So I experienced that salvation. When it came to the payout, because they delayed the payout, they did recognise in the end, he was a known epileptic and the insurance company had given him the insurance based on him being an epileptic, therefore they are liable. So eventually they would pay, but it took a few months for it to settle. And in that time I didn't have a laptop. My laptop I'd put in the car to go show my friends photographs. The laptop got smashed to smithereens. And the house insurance that I'd paid out within a week. And when I phoned them up, they said, well, you didn't even get accidental cover. You got a cover that didn't cover this. I said, go listen to the telephone conversation, because I was told. I said, I even asked the question the day before, what if my laptop was in the car and got damaged? And he said it would pay out, so they had to pay me out. Even though I'd got this really cheap insurance that didn't actually cover that, because we'd had a conversation, that exact conversation, they had to pay me out. And so I was covered in every way possible. My father had reached down as much as he could into my life to save me and to make this horrific thing. It still was horrific for me, don't get me wrong. You can't be in it was not nice, psychologically not nice. But my life was spared that day. And there was all kinds of ways that salvation was made manifest. And like I said, it's even happened to my brother. The first hook into this world is prayer, because that's us reaching out, isn't it? We are putting some kind of, line up there, and then he's thinking, I can now come down even through this line. Just bring me down. My salvation can come down into this world. So obviously, when I'm saying about the only salvation is YHWH, the only salvation is YHWH, the way his salvation is made manifest to us, that creates this connection between heaven and earth, is through the concept of Moshiach. It's through the Torah of Moshiach. It's through the Torah of Moshe. And it's through that we do in obedience to that often. Noah, Daniel and Job couldn't save themselves. But there is ways salvation can be made manifest to us. Okay? And maybe there's some kind of opposite between that and the words of God. If Daniel and Job and Noah cannot save themselves, or only themselves through their own righteousness, maybe the opposite of that is what we're talking about here. Like through the words of Gad the Seer, we can attain connection to those much higher levels of salvation that have been made accessible to us through the likes of Moshe and Yeshua. That's just a little story. No way did I intend to talk about that, by the way, but when I saw that I thought, oh, you're going to need some context here, so I had to just share something personally. I didn't intend to share that. I might have to cut the teaching in half as a result. And nourished in his father's house. So this is talking about Moshe, who was nourished in his father's house. It's got the square ordinal of 7 or 8, and then again. But this is the verse within Acts 7:20. And I've just done a teaching on this to show that the calendar is lunar solar. So not only is this connected to Moshe, and 123 is it's Shem Lakoshech. Sorry, I've got that right. He sets an end to darkness. Kate Shem Lachoshech. Sorry. Kate Shem Lachoshech. He sets an end to darkness. I think that's how you say it. Anyway, he sets an end to darkness, comes to 123. We want that darkness to be set an end to. We want the darkness where our lower natures are dominating over our soul. The impurity is dominating over the pure. The shadow is dominating over the body of Moshiach. We want an end to that, don't we? We want to bring an end to that. So we can see this is also connected to that. Who's this referring to? This is referring to Moshe and the Torah of Moshe that must unite with the concept of Yeshua and the Torah of Moshiach ben Yosef, which there's a revelation of those much higher levels of salvation and much higher levels of mercy that we are able to attain. Just wait a minute. Her voice shall go like a snake. So I've already talked about this, haven't I? Let's go back and have a look. Bear in mind, 129 is Moshiach ben Ephraim, so it's another aspect of Moshiach. That's the hook. That's another channel of salvation to come down into reality via the Moshiach that elevates us up to connect us back up to those powerful levels of spirituality. Let's go back quickly and have a look at what I've just had a look at. Okay, so this is about this whole concept about the Holy Shekinah, the Moshiach, the kingdom, the last letter He of the name YHWH in a very diminished state, the bride, the divine feminine. Rabbi Elazar wept. He opened saying, her sound will move like a snake, Jeremiah 46:22. Now that Israel is in exile, she surely moves like a snake. When a snake bends its head to the dust and raises its tail, the tail dominates and strikes anyone in front of it who causes the tail to rise above, dominate and strike the head which is bent low. Nevertheless, who controls the tail and who propels the movement? The head, although it is bent to the dust, it is said, fallen, not to rise again. The Virgin Israel from Amos 5:2. Nevertheless, the head controls the tail and preserves it. As is said, they made me keeper of the vineyards from Song of Songs 1.6. The other nations who are the tail, Zohar, and that's taken from the Zohar 3, 119b, page 474, the wisdom of the Zohar, Tishbin 103. There's an important parallel here with the Gnostic description in the book of Baruch, Adem. The female force in the divine system, a demonic parallel to the Shekinah, is depicted as a figure whose upper half is a virgin and whose lower half is a snake. So that goes back to Bathyah. The idea originates in pagan myth quoted by Herodotus. So again, we've got this concept of this half woman, half serpent, and we've got to transform that. Okay, and even this Tishbe points out that there's a connection to this concept to be found within the Zohar about this snake. But even when her head is bowed to the dust, even when she is suffering from all the forces of impurity, her head is still controlling the tail. Even though head is bowed down and the tail raised up, i.e. even though the body dominates over the head, or the body dominates over the soul, or the nations dominate over Israel, still it's the head that's in charge. So we've still got this super conscious reality that even in our fallen states is pushing us forward to that place where we will become rectified, where we'll rise up, from the trash heaps, and from being face down in the dirt, we will rise up to the status that we should be prior to our fall. So that's connected again to this whole concept of the Bathyah that I talked about, and everything else that I've just talked about, and powerful connections. I'll let you read the rest of that, but I just wanted to go through that. And this is from Jeremiah 46:22. Its voice shall go forth like that of the snake, for they will march with an army and will come against her with axes as if they were hewers of wood. When you are fallen down, and I've been subject to impurity myself, we're living in a filthy, depraved world, and there are some of our lower natures, some of our physical desires and lusts dominate. Don't let yourself be defined by that, because somewhere hidden in that is a pure motivation. Somewhere hidden in that is the head is governing and still not the tail, because it says it in here. Who's really in charge? The Virgin Israel really in charge, even though it looks like she's fallen not to rise again. Don't take notice of the action in and of itself, because hidden in that is some part of your destiny that will take you to that place where you ultimately need to get to, that place of perfection and rectification. It's this falling down part. It's part of the process of being raised up. Don't be defined by that. Just know somewhere deep within you something sublime is controlling your life. So you just keep on walking. Don't allow yourself to be defined by the dirt your head is down in. Remember that at some point you're going to rise yourself up. You're going to get through this correction process. The reason why you're in this filth is just to correct it, and don't allow yourself to get stuck in those low them feelings of lowliness. And it's very difficult. This world brings us down to nothing. It smashes us to smithereens. If it isn't us messing our life up, it's somebody else having a good old go, just trashing every good that we've ever done. Don't despair. Just keep on going till the end. Okay, because the end is good, and we shouldn't be defined by the dirt that we've been forced to eat. We should really remember who we are. We are not serpent goddesses. We are not half serpent, half human. We are made in the image of YHWH. And that is the ultimate truth. And this is what's put to the test when we come down into a reality where such filth and impurity prevail. We have got to fight that reality with the truth of who we are, to reveal who we are. We are Bathyah, not serpent goddesses, and we are not that. We've got to reveal, like Moses' surrogate mother, the daughter of Pharaoh, has got to reveal that she's not the daughter of Pharaoh. She's not the daughter of some depraved man god. She's the daughter of YHWH. We are children of YHWH, and we have got to fight to reveal that, even in the lives into which we've been birthed, that are sometimes completely contrary. Like I say, she was a serpent goddess, and all that's created to. We're in a fallen state because we've eaten from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. We perceive ourselves as some good and some evil. Don't fight to reveal the truth that you're children of the living God. Okay, we should all do this. It's all our work to do. So I'd not expected to mention anything about that snake. So if you have been benefited from that, you were meant to hear it. Okay. So grace. Okay, we talked about, even in the book of Seer, the book of Gad the Seer that we read, it mentioned about the shadow and the body. And then it mentioned about the revelation of grace, and it also in Colossians it mentioned grace. We do not get to know that we are children of the King except through grace. It's a gracious revelation. We do everything we can to lift ourselves up from the dirt, but that final step is a step of grace. That final revelation to reveal who we truly are is by the grace of YHWH that He reveals Himself to us, and He reveals who we are to Him. Okay, so we've got to always understand that it's connected to the concept of grace. Again, we've got Moshiach ben Ephraim. This is the ordinal of Moshiach ben Ephraim. This is the regular of Moshiach ben Ephraim. So again, connections both to the words of Gad the Seer and the concept of Moshiach ben Ephraim, another appellation of Moshiach. A man of the field. So we are experiencing God through everything, for every thought, word and deed. Every single moment of this life we are experiencing God. Now we're either experiencing him in a revealed way or experiencing him in a concealed way, but one way or another we are in the field of life. We are learning all about life. We are gaining wisdom that we could not gain unless we had experienced the things that we have experienced. We are men of the field. As much as we are like Yaakov, we are out in this world experiencing God for ourselves with every breath that we take. Okay? It's an experience of God. We are not just learning about God by reading a book. We are experiencing God for ourselves. We've got to remember that. You know, Asaph was called a man of the field. And that's the element to us that needs to be refined. When we're out in this field, we can become like wild donkeys. We've got to refine ourselves through this experience. So it is really YHWH that we are experiencing, and not just serpent and satanic realities. We are using this gift of life, this experience that we have in this reality that is so different from the pure spiritual reality from which we fell. But even in this, we are to experience YHWH and nothing else beside him. Okay, so we've got to always bear that in mind as well. But we have got to understand it's a gift to be able to experience God. It's a gift to be able to perceive God in the experience of our lives, through the good times and the bad times, to look back and say there was only YHWH and nothing else beside him. Even when we are even though that experience has put our face down in the dirt, we are still experiencing God. We just have to look for him in that situation. Okay, it's all about experiencing God. 1024, which is exactly the same as the square ordinal plus the regular and the ordinal 316, which is the same as Yeshua, the curse with which Yeshua is cursed. Yeshua is out in this field with us. And in fact, we're in the last day of Lul, and this is the month where the king is in the field. He leaves his holy palace and comes and is with his children in the field. We are in exile. It's called Edomite exile. It's referred to as the field. We've got to transform into the field of Asaph, the field of experience in exile, into the field of the Holy Shekinah, where we experience the indwelling presence of God. You know, just as I was talking about that incident with my brother and myself with the car accidents, horrific things to experience in your life. But if you can see that there was only God in that, and you know, at the time I was thinking, what have I been punished for with this? You know, and not knowing if your baby in your belly's died and things like that. It was very humiliating, I must admit, but I could not deny that God had his hand in that situation. He saved my life, you know, and I've got to be thankful that I was given more opportunity. As hard as what my life has been, I've been given more opportunity to experience life in the field, and hopefully help other people who are experiencing this life, you know, this field. And where we're caught up in that, where the experience is, we're experiencing the exile, we're experiencing the separation between us and God. We can overcome that feeling of separation and bring about a revelation of experiencing the indwelling presence, the field of the Holy Shekinah, where the glory of YHWH fills the whole earth as the waters cover the sea. Well, that's talking about the knowledge of YHWH, with the glory or the knowledge of YHWH, where fills the earth as the waters cover the sea. We want to experience that. We don't just want to think, you know, like see the horrors, taste the dirt and think that's all what it's about. It's not. We've got to transform that experience of being a man of the field into experiencing the field as the field of the Holy Shekinah, you know, the field of pomegranates, whatever other terminology they use to express this mystical, in one way, experience of life on earth. Even in the mundane, everyday situations of our life, we've got to transform it into a revelation. There's only YHWH, nothing else beside him. Then we've got this. This is the Torah. Just in case you were wondering when you're looking at your life and you're thinking, what is this all about? What is this exile? What is my experience all about? What is this sucking dirt day in, day out all about? What is about the serpent whispering in my ear all day long, telling me I'm nothing but a serpent, with my face down in the dirt and my serpent tail raised high, with every single impulse, bodily impulse and fleshly impulse reigning over me? What is this all about? This is the Torah. This is the Torah. Okay, this is the clear Torah. It comes to 1024. What you are learning through this experience is true Torah. It's the concept of, it's written in the Torah about the Torah given in a place of scorpions and snakes, in the desert. Why? Because it's only in that experience that you really do experience true Torah, that what is written in the book is real. This is real wisdom and real light and real wisdom, real understanding and real knowledge, because it's been put to the test and it's proved to be faithful. There's only YHWH and nothing else beside him. This is the Torah. It's when we experience this life and know that there's only YHWH and nothing else beside him. We didn't just read it in a book. Every single atom in our body knows this. Every single atom in our body. I always say, when at the end of the days, when we downloaded and every single aspect of our life flits before us, what will it confirm? It will confirm only one thing. There's only YHWH and nothing else beside him. Know it now. Don't wait until we get to the other side to know what we should know now. Okay, this is Torah that we are experiencing. 1024, so connected again to the words of Gad the Seer. Okay, we need these words now then, don't we? One way or another, we have got to access this light that comes from Gad the Seer. 1112 is 8 times 139, which is 8 times Yon HaNavi. Yon HaNavi is the prophet, by the way, that reveals the truth, Od Yosef Chai. And that truth, that Yosef is still alive, is a secret inner meaning for the entire Torah, and that's got to be embedded in the final letter. The final letter here represents the Peshat, the literal level of interpreting the Torah. The secret level is what we get out in the field. Like Yosef was sent out into the field. He says, go into the field. Yaakov sent him into the field where his brothers were. It was in the field that he ended up getting sold, and all the harm came to him. But prior to him going into the field, he was taught the Arufa, what's it called now? They breaking the neck of the cow. I can't remember. Arufa. Anyway, look. When you're in a situation where you're going to go out into the field is referred to as Esav. So all this life's experience is basically us in the field. We're in danger in this field, just like Yosef was put in danger. So, but you can even see in the story of Yosef, the secret hand of YHWH just orchestrating everything for a final and ultimate salvation. Everything is perfectly and absolutely perfectly timed and coordinated according to his will and his purpose, and according to perfect us in order to be able to receive that revelation of his absolute oneness and perfection. And but it's tough getting there, isn't it? It's tough getting there. But there's that connection, isn't it, between Yosef and the concept of him going out into the field to meet his brothers and then going through everything that he went through. It's all by the will of YHWH. What did he say? He said, what you meant for evil, God meant for good. And it was to bring about a salvation. That's the word that was used. Going back to the secret meaning of the Torah, that's where we learn the secret meaning of the Torah, the hidden meaning of the Torah. The last letter here, which represents the Malkuth, has got to be impregnated with the secret inner meaning of the Torah. What's the secret inner meaning of the Torah? Od Yosef Chai. Yosef is still alive. He was sent out to the field. This really crazy thing happened. His brothers sold him into exile. He had to go through a whole experience in exile. But finally, he was redeemed from that situation. He came back to his brothers, and he wasn't dead, as his own father had believed, and his brothers had told him that had happened. Od Yosef Chai. So that's the secret inner meaning of the Torah. It's got to unite with the final letter here, the literal meaning of the Torah, in order for the literal meaning of the Torah to have any sense at all. This is the Torah of Moshiach, in a way. So it's like the Torah of Moshiach ben Yosef unites with the Torah of Moshe, the stick of Yosef, and then we've got a correct interpretation of the Torah. And we learn it that both ways. We'll learn it through the experience that we have in the field, like our connection to Yosef, but we also learn it we learn it through the words of the Torah that is written, that was handed down to Moshe. Okay, so we experience Torah in both those ways, like this unit. I hope I've been able to, I'd not really thought about what we were going to say for that. I hope I've been able to clarify that. But this life is Torah. Every single thing that is happening to you 100% is Torah. Is teaching you something about the glory of God and his oneness. You know, the low places to where we have been descended, the whole excruciating agony that we experience, like Joseph out in the field, and all the consequences of being dragged out into the field, you know, it's Torah. We are being taught Torah. We simply just have to open our eyes to see it. Okay, so that is Torah. Every individual life experience is Torah. It's what does that mean? It's a revelation of his name in our lives, uniquely, unique to our own lives, our own personal experiences, and some of those we can share with others. And some are just sometimes it's just between you and our Father in heaven. Okay, nothing else beside him. Okay, let's see what else we've got. So this is related to the 248, which takes us back up here. The sea saw and fled, the Jordan turned backward. What did the sea see and flee from? The coffin of Yosef. The bones of Yosef that Sarach Bat Asher, along with Moshe, helped to raise up so the children of Israel could leave Egypt. Okay. I've gone on about that. And then this is also this 708 connected to the Shema. Shema, O Israel. Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Okay, so the square regular of that comes 231,516. There's all kinds of numbers involved with that, but it equals 327 times 708. What's 327? 327 is the ordinal of Moshiach ben David, which is 82. The ordinal of Moshiach ben Yosef, which is 116. And the ordinal of Moshiach ben Ephraim, 129. So add them all together, 129, 116 and 82, and we have 227. Let me just check that out. Yeah, we have got that 327. So it's Moshiach ben Yosef, Moshiach ben David, Moshiach ben Ephraim, multiplied by 708, which is a square ordinal of the words of Gad the Seer. Okay. Got two more things to look at.